Hey, welcome to another episode of All Our Yesterdays. Our guest Pat is having a few technical difficulties, and we have to go live or we lose the spot. So we're hoping that he figures it out. And if he does, then hopefully he joins. And if he doesn't, we've got our backup guest who has agreed to be the guest co-host, but now is on the spot and is actually the guest. But before I introduce him, we'll introduce the producer, Kevin, who's running the show.
What's up, everybody?
Our guest co-host turned guest, Robert Patterson, who is a set jetter, and he's here to tell us about all the stuff he does and where he goes and how it all started. And let's just get into it. Welcome, Robert, and thanks for being the guest co-host. And now you're the guest. So
the show must go on, and I believe in serendipity, so there's a reason I'm here.
It's true, but it looks like he is here. It's it's still connecting. It's not connecting fully.
So if he does get in, we'll be like, "Too bad, Robert. You're now guest co-host again."
I will sit back.
Yeah.
But anyways, if he does get connected here,
it just disappeared. So I don't know what's going on. Yeah,
okay. He's working on it. It seems like.
Yeah.
So tell us, like I say, until something else happens, how you got into this whole set jetting thing.
Well, I was trying to think back that, I've always had a love of movies. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. And so those were like the golden age of movies. And I'd been to a few locations over, like I remember being at Niagara Falls where they shot Superman 2 and be excited about that. But I really got into it. I'm a horror movie lover. So I really think back the first time I went to West Hollywood to see the Halloween houses and the Elm Street house. And that just really cinched it for me. I could not believe I was like, I was in Haddonfield, Illinois. It was just like a dream come true.
Nice. Yeah. Now, what street is that the Halloween was filmed on? I don't know if you remember off the top of your head or not.
Yeah, that's Orange Grove, right off of Sunset Boulevard, and then 2 blocks over is Genesee Street, where the Elm Street house is. So, which I always think it's neat that you have two pretty iconic horror films. Both taking place in supposedly the Midwest, and also just literally off the busiest street in West Hollywood.
Yeah, I went to Hollywood in '94 and was trying to find an agent to get into show business and sell a TV show that I had written. And I was on Sunset. If I had only known then that it was just a couple streets over, but that's the thing. You don't always know where these things were filmed. And sometimes it's like, in your hometown, you didn't even know it or whatever, but that's cool. So I know you're big into horror, but so was that the cream of the crop, or is there a place that's even better than that?
At the time, there was kind of nothing better than that. And I've had many, many great experiences. And I don't know if it's just good luck or good Midwestern charm, but I've had people. I remember I was down in New Orleans a couple years ago, and I was doing 21 Jump Street filming locations. And usually I just, I don't intrude. I just take pictures of the outside, and the guy comes out and I'm ready for my usual spiel because I go, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, they shot inside the house. Do you want to come in and see?" I'm like, "Well, sure." And they pulled it up on the DVR, the scene, and they tell me all these different things. And it was Labor Day, and they say, "We're having a Labor Day picnic, so if you want to stick around." And so I've had many. Same thing happened when I went down to Charleston for the Halloween 2018 locations. Usually I'm just an indoor or outdoor, picture person, but Halloween is my favorite series by a long shot. And so every once in a while I'll just knock on the door, and these people just said, "Yeah, here's the closet where Michael came out of." And I don't even answer the door at my own house, let alone just let strangers in. So I'm not sure what it is. Yeah,
it maybe they're used to it. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they would have told you if that was the case. But I was going to say, like, maybe they're into it too. So they're like, "All right, I'm buying this house because of this."
Yeah.
But I don't know. Who knows?
I think Charleston, it was still new to this was like literally right after the movie came out, and so I think I was probably one of the first people to be running around there. But yeah, and it's not like the jaded LA people are like, "Just get off my lawn." But
yeah. There's a few. I'm in Mass. RW's up in Vermont. They film a lot around here. They've actually been filming a lot in Central Mass over the last couple of years, in like downtown Worcester area. But like there's me and my friends go for like a walk at this regular location, and it's where it's like a mental institution where they filmed Shutter Island and stuff like that.
Nice.
Yeah, we've never been in because I don't think you can, but I think it was all the exterior stuff was filmed there. But it's really cool. Like I've seen the movie, I like the movie. I don't love the movie, I like the movie, but even still, just to be there is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, it's the closest you can get to kind of stepping into the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, have you ever had an experience where you were taking a photo and like you're out on the sidewalk, let's say, and somebody's like, "Hey, enough is enough," or like, "Yes, I get it. This is the house used in this thing, but like, move along," or has it always been pretty good?
Yeah, I've had a few, I'll say, not so good experiences just every once in a while. Usually it's downtown LA, that's kind of sometimes you're in kind of sketchy areas. And I was like, and I call my drive-by shots where it's like I don't get out of the car, I just have it on sport shutter and take pictures out the window. That's all you're gonna get from me. But every once in a while people are, but like I said, for the most part, if you stay on the sidewalk, you're entitled to take pictures, and I try not to be too intrusive. Or if somebody's, declines, I'm like, fair enough. You need to be nice. That's otherwise you kind of ruin it for for future people, and that has happened. Obviously, the Goonies house is a prime example. At one point, that fans pissed them off enough that they kind of put up some blue tarp and stuff like that, and that's the last thing you want. But for the most part, I'd say 99% of the time, sometimes people have no idea that their house was used in a movie. And I remember one of the Slumber Party Massacre houses. I'm taking pictures and the guy comes out and, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, Slumber Party Massacre." He's like, "Really?" He's like, "My girlfriend loves horror movies. She will be thrilled that our house is actually in a horror movie." They had no idea.
Wow. That's funny. Yeah, I've heard the same thing about the Goonies house, where it's like people used to be able to like pretty easily like go up there, and they weren't going in the house, they were just exterior shots and stuff like that. But then I heard that it's you don't want to go there anymore because it's a little
I think it's changed back again, so I think that they are letting people. A good example in a positive way was the Elm Street house, and I think the owners, it's changed again, but when the new owner took over it, she was super nice. She let and that's when people do, and I get it, I've been guilty, people jump up to the porch to take a picture. They're not doing anything more than that, but it's got to be annoying if people are constantly on your porch. But it is like, but she was open to it. I think there are new owners now, so I'm not quite sure how much, but at least they haven't put a fence up or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like the Breaking Bad house, obviously, is another example. Where people went too far and were throwing pizzas on the roof. And
I was going to say, I was like, that's exactly what I was going to say. I'm like, people just throwing pizzas on the roof, pissing the owner off.
And that's where I'm like, you know what? You've ruined it for everybody else.
Yeah. Way to go. Yeah.
Now I know you have, your blog where you've talked about stuff, but now you're trying to transfer it over to this list thing or whatever. And you say, when I talked to you the other day, you're like, I got like 200 things that I haven't added yet. Mm-hmm. So obviously this is a wicked passion in your backlog because of just the amount of stuff that you've done. Now, have you ever gone, I think you did the Breakfast Club, but in that same area is, well, not the exact same area, but not too far away is the Home Alone house. Did you visit that yet? Or
I did, just because I'm not a huge Home Alone fan. But a friend was taking me. I remember that particular trip to kind of the north of Chicago locations. I remember most about the trip. I was most excited to go to the She's Having a Baby house, which is kind of on this. That was just one of my favorite movies, and that one I just kind of hit the highlights. Like if you're on a schedule, you really can, if you've been to my website, I'm pretty meticulous. If I like a movie, I try to find every last single shot and angle. And sometimes you're like, nope, I just need to do the hits and kind of get around there. But 16 Candles house and some of the party house from 16 Candles or the church. I love churches for the most part because you can go inside and get a lot of pictures. My past trip in LA, I went to the Stepfather 2 church, and they were more than happy for me to take pictures all over the place. And they're actually setting up to shoot another movie in their little chapel next door. And that little chapel next door, this is kind of the weird thing. In my hotel room, I'm getting ready, and The Office was on, and it was the episode where Pam and Jim get married, and it's supposed to be in Niagara Falls. And so I didn't think too much of it. And I go there, and I'm like, oh, this little chapel that I saw a half hour ago is right next door. This is like,
oh, wow.
And that's what I love about LA, because, just everything, every inch of LA has been used.
Yeah. And it's just like, but of course they always try to make it sound like it's somewhere else. Yeah. Like, were saying before, and even still with filming in Mass, like they were doing the newest Black Panther in Worcester, but they're not going to call it Worcester. It says Boston Police everywhere, all over that. And it's like, all right, I understand. No one knows what Worcester is, but whatever, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. It's pretty interesting that they do that. I mean, they I want to say, yeah, they did. Was it American Hustle was in Worcester as well? So that's supposed to look like. No, they do a lot of stuff that's supposed to be old, like New Jersey in Central Mass for some reason. But whatever.
Well,
I'm fine
some
with
of the, New York is too expensive. LA has gotten too expensive to shoot, and then especially if you're doing period movies, you need to go somewhere else that has not
old and beat
changed.
Up.
Yeah. So Omaha has been used a couple times I know Sean Penn has shot a couple different things out here that are kind of supposed to be a little bit more period pieces. Alexander Payne is from Omaha, so Election and Citizen Ruth and About Schmidt have all been shot around Omaha, which
Nice.
The funny thing is sometimes it's harder for me to find an Omaha location than it is an LA location. Don't ask me why. There's still places I can't find from these Omaha based movies that it's my backyard. I should be able to find this pretty easily.
Yeah. Well, maybe you'll end up out these neck of the woods at some point because they've been doing a lot. Because the most recent season of Dexter was filmed out here.
Oh, nice.
The new Hocus Pocus, the new Salem's Lot, like those are all filmed out here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Hocus Pocus because obviously the sequel, there's been a lot of hype about that, and I remember I looked like they set up a little village. They kind of built somewhere.
I didn't go check it out. That's the other thing too. It's like all these places are around here, and I'm like, I'd never go. So I live in Central Massachusetts. I've never actually gone to Salem.
I believe you because
isn't that crazy? I don't know.
They were shooting Downsizing here with Matt Damon and Kristen Wiig, and I was at work, and my dad and sister were going to visit, and they're like, "Well, maybe just come visit." I'm like, "I don't know. I have to finish this stuff." It's a movie shooting literally just a couple miles from me. And you think that would be an easy one compared to the hundreds of miles that I drive every day when I'm in LA. But so I did actually go over and kind of watch them shoot a little bit. But as you also know,
trouble.
Yeah.
Well, he's watching because he just sent me a thing that said, "Wow, the Stepfather 2 church." He can hear us, and I think he's watching us. He just for some reason cannot get connected. So hopefully he tries again, and maybe he'll get in here. And if not, again, we'll have to get him on again or whatever. I just wanted to
we'll have to get it figured out either way. I mean, it's
I said that
only
you
the
saw
third
him
episode.
trying to connect, and maybe he has to allow audio and video or whatever, and maybe he just didn't see that pop up or whatever. It
Something
didn't
like that.
Interrupt, but so that's that. But
so is there any bucket list places that you want to check out, or maybe have you like gone to other countries to check out?
Canada. So one of my favorite places to go is Vancouver, and I'm not sure if you've been out there, but like literally in their 30-mile zone, they have everything from oceans to mountains to, super urban, futuristic, Tron Legacy was shot out there. So that's one of my favorite places to go to. I went to Toronto a few years ago, which is also it can be anything. Hannibal was one of my favorite TV series, and just to see everything that was kind of shot out there. So I was actually supposed to go to London a few years ago, and a couple of days before I had emergency gallbladder surgery. So that trip was not in the cards, but I had it all planned out of all the places that I wanted to go. So it's still on my to go list for sure.
Yeah. I do another show that we just like review a bunch of old classic like black and white horror, and it's a lot of like really cool stuff from over in the UK, and it just makes me want to like, I don't know, it just seems so cool. Like there's so much history out there. I just want to go check that stuff out at some point in my life before, there's another pandemic.
Absolutely. In between pandemics, we need to do these things. So,
and then you have unfortunately the ones that no longer exist or are about to no longer exist. Perfect example. Last week we had Catherine Mary Stewart on. We were talking about Last Starfighter, and Robert's gone to the trailer park, which is gone. And I guess the only thing that's left is where he was playing the video game. There was that like little store or whatever. That's the only thing that exists. But you can tell us more about how you went one time and then went back a second time and what had happened between those two times or whatever.
Yeah, I think I've been two or three times to that location. So remember the first time I went, kind of the latticed work, it was kind of a covered deck where he's playing, and that was still there. And I took some great pictures. and I was going to Tippi Hedren has her place out there where you can go visit all the tigers and cats and stuff like that. So it was right after one of many fires, that came through north of LA. And those fires, if you look at my pictures, those trees on one side of the road, just black, singed. It looked like something out of Phantasm. And if you see my pictures, the store itself is like the fire went right up to it. Just the edge of the woods is all black, singed. That's how close the fire was, and would have taken that whole building down. So, and I know since then, because of that fire, I think they had to kind of rebuild. So that area, which where he is playing the video games, is now they kind of built that out, so you can't really get the way it used to look, but it's still there.
It's still there. You just got to find it. Yeah. It's like I went to the Quick Stop where they did Clerks, and and like, from the outside it looked like it was, and then you walk in like whatever, but then like as soon as you went down like one aisle, it was like exactly the same as it was in the movie, and I was like, wow, they haven't changed a thing in this place.
Yeah.
But then RSD video is still there, but it's not open. But I don't know. I mean, we made a day out of that. It's just us just taking pictures, like reenacting like stuff from the movie. And we're like, oh, this is, I'm like, I felt dumb, but I'm like, I'm sure this happens all day long.
I'm sure. And they got to be used to it. And so speaking of Toronto, that reminded me when you talk about, we call it nerding out, Sean Clark, who runs Horrors Hallowed Grounds, does a lot of videos. That we were both in Toronto at the same time, and we both had a free day. So we went to the prom night filming locations, and we the school and the cemetery, and we reenacted some scenes as best as we could and stuff like that. But and that's obviously, it's not like not too many people are going to those locations versus the Back to the Future locations. So people are probably kind of curious what was going on there. But yeah, this is the word set jetting comes from, it's kind of the Urban Dictionary of people who make their vacations around visiting filming locations. And that's obviously what I do, and obviously what a lot of people do. It's kind of a whole new, not necessarily industry, but a whole new thing that people do.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I used to plan my vacations around haunted locations, and me and my wife would go spend like a week at like an inn by ourselves, to see if anything would happen. But whatever, it's a good time. Like, have you ever thought about like, I mean, you said it's kind of like a new industry or kind of like the up and coming thing. Is there like a market out there to like offer like a vacation package, like put together something and just be like, plan it out for somebody?
I would think so. Yeah. And I do, sometimes I get, especially from foreign countries that come in over and like, hey, we're going to LA. Can you help us? And I put a whole Google map for them. I'm like, tell me your favorite movies. And I just create a Google map just for them so they can get around as easily as possible, because I get it. I remember I had a couple of friends from Australia that were in LA, and they were staying in Pasadena, and they're like, they wanted to go visit the Poltergeist house. And they're like, oh, we'll just Uber it. And I'm like, that will cost you a few $100s, I think, too. Yeah. So I said, tell you what, I will take the day and I will take you to all your favorite horror places. So that kind of sparked. I'm like, if I'm going to have a retirement job, that would be my,
totally.
Tour person to say, hey, tell me your favorite movies. I'll plan out the day for you and kind of take you around. And especially because I get it, I'm more than comfortable driving in LA, but I get the fear of people like, I don't know this place, and I'm a little bit afraid, but for sure. And I have started adding, so some of the big franchises at the end of every page, I have a whole map. So like for the Halloween franchise and the Scream franchise and Friday the 13th, I have a Google map of all the locations. So if people want to really kind of get into it, they can plan their whole vacation around that.
That's awesome. That's cool, because there's some people out there who, have their little thing that they do and they don't want to share it with anybody. They're like, hey, I figured this out on my own. You figure it out on your own. I'm not giving up my secrets. This is my thing. So the fact that you want to share that with other people is, again, the world needs more like sharing of information and helping each other. So it's like, just the fact that you say that is amazing, because, most people would be like, yeah, it's in Hollywood. Because I forgot what it was. I was trying to find the walkie-talkie from Escape from New York, and there's a guy who's like, yeah, I have one, and I'm like, what is it? And he goes, yeah, it's a walkie-talkie from like the 80s, and it's like, he won't tell you what brand, he won't tell you who made it, it's just like, it's a walkie-talkie, and I found it because he doesn't want someone else to find it, because now he's not as special because he has the walkie-talkie and he doesn't want anybody else to have it. I guess that's a perfect example. But the fact that you're like making maps and like, if you want to find this house, it's right here. And I mean, one of the best examples when I talked to you on the phone was Stranger Things. You've supposedly found the house before anybody else had found it. Why don't you talk a little bit about how you like tracked this one house down when there was no information available at all?
Yeah, Stranger Things had just came out, and I was looking for a lot of locations, and everything was brand new. And the Wheeler house, which is used quite a bit, was not published yet, and nobody knew where it was. And so I was like, oh, in my mind, I knew where the studio was, and I could see those huge electrical towers. So more or less, I just followed electrical towers from Atlanta south to find the route kind of cul-de-sac. And and this happens quite often where I pull up to the house literally at the same time the owner does. Because usually if the owner's, I just take my pictures and I kind of move on. And otherwise I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to talk to this person in the end. And he's like, well, how'd you find this place? And I explained it. And I said, I'm from Nebraska. I pulled a Nebraska card when I can, because sometimes that's helpful, that I came all the way to Nebraska just for this. And he's like, really? And he made me show him my driver's license. I don't know, maybe he didn't quite believe me, but yeah, so he said I was the first person to kind of figure that out or kind of visit. And at that time, he actually let me take pictures of his garage where they shot. Since then, I know there's kind of signs like no trespassing and so forth. Yeah. But like I said, it's been mostly good experiences. And sometimes it's the thrill of the chase. I just like finding the spot, and especially kind of the older ones, of course, now we can, if something's shooting, you can kind of figure out where they're, you can do some backwards tracking, but I kind of like those hard to find ones as well. Now I do share everything, but I do like to get there first. So there's been a few where I'm like, I'm going to hold my cards until I actually get there, because
right.
I think about, I'm a huge Madonna fan. And so I finally found the Like a Prayer filming locations.
Oh, wow.
And where, she's by her apartment and she sees the girl getting attacked and so forth. And I finally figured it out. And I think I booked a trip. I'm like, even though I found it, I felt like I put it somehow mentally out in the universe. I need to get there right away so I can be the first to, kind of get pictures. But and there's a lot of people now, even more than ever, that do what I do. So it's a fun group to be with.
Yeah, it sounds it. I mean, do you guys ever like brainstorm to try to if you're having a hard time, you're like, all right, what do you got on this? What do I got on this? Let's put it together and figure this out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We give him can you find this hotel? And we share photos and stuff like that. And I always try to, if I can't find this in 20 minutes, I take that as a personal offense to myself. If I can't find something, or sometimes it feels like, I've seen this. And I have this rule, all roads lead to Burbank. And cause there's been many times where I can't find something, and it was literally shot in Burbank. And Burbank is where I always fly into and I always stay, because it's just an easier airport. But they shoot so much there. But yeah, so it's a lot of fun, and I like doing it and like sharing it. And if you go to my page, I think when I was talking to RW, that I was like, I wonder how many 80s movies that I actually have on my page. And it was like 180 some in 1980 movies alone. So obviously, I'm an 80s kid at heart.
Yeah, I think we all are. I mean, I was born in 75, so it's like I grew up, most of my time was in the 80s. Like RW was probably in a better spot in the 80s where he got to experience the stuff full-fledged, He's a little bit older than me.
Yeah, but, I'm older than dirt. Like seriously, I came
not really.
Dirt.
I was born in 70, so I'm 52 now. But I was just on another podcast talking about the summer of '82, and just I lived through that summer, and obviously kind of remember all those movies, between just what a great summer it was between E.T. and Poltergeist and The Thing, and just week after week, all these great movies. And I'm like, I don't think we've had 10 of those kind of caliber movies in the past 10 years.
Yeah, we did. No. Yeah, I mean, the 80s pounded out. And again, people are like, when I talk about the 70s or 80s, people are like, yeah, but, that was then. And there's good movies now, but why are we still talking about Back to the Future? Yeah, I mean, why are we still talking about The Breakfast Club? Why are we still talking about Star Wars and, all these other movies if the new stuff is just as good? And I don't think that it is. I just think, and I don't think that it's not. I just think that it was the 80s, the 70s and 80s was this different time period that put out different movies.
Right. And we weren't as bombarded with social media and YouTube and Candy Crush as we are now, so there wasn't all these other things to distract us. So it's like, holy crap, E.T., like, I'm going to go see this. There's no other way to see this other than going to the movies to see it.
Right.
And that's why we've had Dee Wallace on a couple times. And like besides all of the other horror stuff that we've talked about, the fact that she told me she still, as far as I know, she still has an actual E.T. like head or whatever, like in her garage or something. That alone, I was like, what? I want to go to your house just to see this thing. Like,
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
Can you imagine? I mean, I bet you there's a lot of celebrities who were lucky enough, I don't know, so like they wore a certain costume through most of the movie and they got to just keep it. And so like they, oh yeah, here's the like when I met Art Carney from the Honeymooners at his house in Connecticut, I was in his dining room or his kitchen with his wife, Jean, and Art. And he's like, I'll be right back. And he leaves and he goes upstairs and he comes down with his hat. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is the hat, like, and he puts it on and he's sitting there and we take some photos with each other. And I'm like, and he let me hold it. I didn't put it on, but I'm like, I'm holding freaking
history
Ed Norton's hat in my hand. Like, oh my God, like seriously. And so we took a couple pictures together and, Art's wearing his hat in this photo with him and I in his dining room. And like, if the picture's right here, I'm looking this way and there's a sliding glass door looking out to Long Island Sound on Connecticut. And there's like this beach right outside his house. I'm like, I can't even fathom that I'm in Art Carney's house taking a photo with him and he's wearing his Norton hat. Like it was just think about, like, I guess Ryan Reynolds stole the Deadpool costume or whatever, So like, I'm sure Mark Hamill has something, and it's just, you pass that down to your kids, and then someday, Mark Hamill's, great grandson has his lightsaber or whatever. And, that's just so wacky to realize.
It's weird because I always wonder too, like I like in meeting the people going to cons and stuff like that, some people have like really affected you, like in movies have really affected me in my life. And it's like you go and you talk to them and like, I just want to explain to you how much this meant to me. And they're like, oh, no, it's whatever. I'm like, you don't understand. Like, like it means a lot. Like something's like, okay, yeah, I get it. But it's, so I wonder, like, if I mean, obviously the hat means something to him, but I wonder if he realizes how much it means to the fans and stuff like that, or how much he, when he was still with us, like how much it meant to the fans. So I wonder if they really do,
The reason it meant so much to him is he had a brother who died, and that was his hat. It was his brother's hat.
Oh.
So his brother had given it to him, before he died or whatever. And then he got the role on, Honeymooners and wore this hat. So I think it's got that sentimental value to him for that reason or whatever. But yeah, it's funny. You go to a con sometimes and you're like, oh my God, John Doe, what, I don't know. I'm just saying John Doe for just the sake of not naming an actor or whatever, but you're like, oh my God, one of my favorite movies of all time is blah, 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 blah. And you're like doing all these lines from the movie and they're looking at you like, what? And you're like, you remember when you did the thing and you said that, and then
no,
like maybe somebody from like MASH or Love Boat or A-Team or some show that's been on, was on for like 5, 7, 8 seasons. And you're like, remember that line? And they're like, no, I went to work, I did my job, and I moved on, and I've done so many things since then, but I'm glad you enjoyed it, So like,
it's like that William Shatner sketch.
Are more like, oh my God, than the person who did it are.
I think
was
that
SNL, right? The William Shatner
Get a Life.
Where just like, get a life. Yeah.
I think the weird thing is and I think as a horror movie lover, the Friday 13th and the Halloweens, they might have worked on that film 2 weeks tops. Like it was a tiny slice of their life, and for us, we watched it on VHS hundreds of times. Like with that, we experienced the movie even more than they actually did in real life, and so I think sometimes they don't quite kind of get like how. The depth of the level or the things that stick with us. Before we went live, I was talking about meeting Teresa Ganzel from The Toy, which I think was 1982 as well. And just, I was telling her my favorite lines, like the propellers, and, and she's like, oh, and it was coming back to her and stuff like that. But it was just like, those are things that are ingrained in us that were just kind of, she probably was kind of not quite a throwaway line, on the set.
She's
Yeah,
like, yeah, if you say so, I must have said it.
Yeah, sure, yeah, that. No,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
like
next.
I through cons and stuff like that, I've gotten to be cool with like people like Tony Todd and like Felissa Rose and stuff like that. So it's like, like they have scenes in their careers that have affected me to the point of like whenever I have a new job that I'm starting or whatever, I'll always have like a nightmare the night before about meeting new people, and every time I meet them, they're shooting bees out of their mouth, and that's because it's Candyman,
Yep.
And so I got to talk to Tony, and then like he invited me to a play out in Hartford and all these other things, and it's just like I was like afterwards, I'm like, you have no idea how much this means to me. He's like, oh no, don't worry about it. I'm like, no, you really have no idea how much this means to me. You don't know. Like you've affected my life since I saw Candyman for the first time. It's been part of my life, And he's just like, okay, I get it,
Yeah.
But then, not to take away anything else he's done. He's awesome. He's amazing. Yeah. But that's what's like kind of like made it like solid in my mind that he's awesome. And then I just continued to follow his career, and he's always been great. But I don't know. I mean, but then besides that, another character in the movie are the locations, which is what you're checking out, and hopefully the homeowners, get that eventually. But
yeah, and RW, I think you're talking about like some of them don't exist anymore or on the verge of not existing, and one I'm upset about is it took me years to find the original house from The Stepfather, the 1987 original, and I finally found it. I don't know why it took me so long. And then just like 6 months ago or something, like they tore it down and putting up a McMansion. I was like, oh, I didn't get out there in time. And those are things that just really frustrate me the most.
We had talked about on the phone the Warner Ranch, which is, if you don't know the Warner Ranch, anybody watching, it's a basically Warner Brothers built an entire like suburbia place. Roads, street lights, fences, houses, churches, police departments, like it looks like an actual town. And they filmed Bewitched, Lethal Weapon. So the house that was, I think it was Murdaugh's house, probably. Yep. And then the Christmas Vacation house, all on this one set. So when you see people driving down the road, it's a set. It's, owned by Warner. And they're about to bulldoze the entire thing, all the memories of every movie that was ever filmed there. So the Christmas Vacation house will be no longer, the Bewitched house will be no longer, the Murtaugh's house from Lethal Weapon will be no longer, and so many other things. And did you say you did get there, or you didn't?
I did. I was fortunate.
So you can tell us more about what you saw and what's no longer going to be around. And it just tears at my heart that you would bulldoze that much history.
Absolutely. So for Warner Brothers, they have their public studio in Burbank, but another part of Burbank they have called the Ranch, and I think it was the Columbia Ranch at the time when it was kind of first built. And so it has decades and decades of, like you said, history and Gremlins, and the pool from Christmas Vacation. That's also the pool from Gremlins, that they built a YMCA walls around. Wonder Woman, the Friends fountain was over there, where you kind of see that in the background. Jane's apartment from Naked Gun 3, I think it was. Yeah. So it's just like, it has everything. The Goonies, remember the Cyndi Lauper video where she's in front of the store, that was right there as well. So it happened to be, there's a Scarecrow and Mrs. King fan club of some sort that they asked me to help to find some locations. I helped them. And for some reason we must have talked, because he remembered that I had wanted to get on the ranch, and he got special permission for the Scarecrow and Mrs. King kind of fan club to do that. So he invited me, and I made a special trip out because I thought, oh, this is going to be once in a lifetime. And this was well before anything about it being bulldozed. And so glad I got out there and I took all the pictures I could. And then and there's been a couple things of trying to get these houses saved. And I don't think I think now they're trying to say, can we get these houses moved? And these houses really aren't, they're not made to be moved, and they've been rebuilt multiple times, and we're all really, it's Hollywood. They're supposed to be kind of temporary. So I don't think there'll be too much success in kind of even getting them moved to a different lot. They did move the Friends fountain to the main Warner Brothers, and I think I heard that they damaged it along the way. So so somewhere it's mostly the real fountain from Friends that you can take your picture in front of, and now at the Warner Brothers public studio. But yeah, so it'll be sad, and I know why they're doing it. But I've also seen, I remember when you look at Universal Studios, that the Jaws boat just rotted until it was taken apart and thrown in the trash. I'm like, you can't get more iconic, props, from a film like that. I think the Leave It to Beaver house just sat in the back lot, kind of rotting away until they just kind of diminished that. I remember this about a decade ago, there was talks about Universal wanted to kind of sell their land and get rid of the Psycho house in the Bates Motel, and I'm like, no, that's granted it's moved from its kind of original location. It was also been rebuilt many times, so there's not too much original there. But I'm like, no, there are certain things that we need to hold sacred too, and so it'll be a sad loss. And I have heard, I haven't been back out there, but I think they've been a little bit more lenient about some fans have actually gotten on the lot to take last minute pictures and stuff like that. So I mean, if you're out there, give it a try.
It's cool that you're able to do that, but it's also horrible that it doesn't seem like it's going to stop them from doing that. And it's unfortunately it's all money. Like if someone just like gave them the money to not do it, they would just like, okay, we won't do it.
I think they're bulldozing it to build more big movie studios to film in. So you couldn't find land somewhere else to do that. Like seriously, come on, but yeah, it's kind of sad to know that. And then the wildfires took out a bunch of old Western towns and
the Paramount Ranch.
Didn't it take out Back to the Future, like the whole Universal lot where Back to the Future was filmed and stuff?
Yeah, so Universal's had about 2 or 3 fires, I think, over the years where it takes out quite a bit. It took out the last one, I think, was at 2008. Took out a lot of the New York sets, and that had rebuilt. And when you think of how much history was there between the Sting and just like everything was kind of shot on those. And I have some archival pictures, but kids don't know that pre-digital, you had to be selective about how many rolls of film that you had, and snapping pictures along the way. Now you just take thousands of pictures and you decide later what you want to keep. So yeah, that's why I'm like, you know what, life is short enough as is. Go get your pictures. The Paramount Ranch out in by Malibu Creek, I was out to a couple times. That was almost entirely destroyed except for one or two buildings out there, and they're going to rebuild that, which is fine, and it'll probably be rebuilt a little bit better and be kind of more efficient for modern filmmaking. But it's not the same. They can rebuild it exactly as is, but it won't quite have the authenticity of kind of being the original location.
I can only imagine how long, with the Warner Ranch, with that whole neighborhood there, with trees and mailboxes and roads and sidewalks and swimming pools and garages and just this whole thing that makes you think that it's filmed on location somewhere. How long it takes to build all these houses, plant all that grass, put all these sidewalks in, pave all these streets, and put this all together, and then a fire wipes it out or a bulldozer wipes it out. And it's like, dude, that must have taken like forever to build all that stuff the first time. And now you're either going to mow it down or, a fire destroys it all. And you're like, we'll rebuild it. But like, it just must, the amount of history though, like you said, you can rebuild, like there's a house down in North Carolina. It looks just like the Myers house, but it's not the Myers house. It looks like it, but it's not it. So it's cool, but it's not the real Myers house. So you can build something that like you could build Elvis Presley's house, Graceland, but it's not Graceland. Graceland is Graceland. So to rebuild something is just a replica, So, but yeah, it's a shame that Pat didn't, wasn't able to join it because, we were going to talk about Jaws. And when you talked about the rotting boat, I'm sure that's probably in his book or whatever. But
it's a sore spot for everybody. Spielberg especially.
Yeah, Jaws is one of those movies that, hit a lot of people, and it's still, after 40 whatever years, it's still like, I think it's 45 now, maybe, or 50. I can't remember, but at least 40. Everybody's like Jaws. And I know I saw a picture a while back of like one of the original A-Team fans sitting on some back lot, fenced in, and it's all rusted and tires are deflated. And you're like, why? Like, why did we let all these iconic things just rot?
Yeah,
people suck. That's why.
Yeah. I think the hard part is, so, in movies, all of this is really supposed to be temporary. It's supposed to be taken up, taken down, and moved on. And sometimes they reuse stuff and sometimes they don't. So it's an industry that is supposed to have all these kind of temporary things. And you never know what is going to hit iconic status right away. So things that they threw away, it was like, oh, this would have been important. I think I remember reading that one of the speak and spells from E.T., from the actual film, was used on the E.T. the ride at the time because it was there and they just threw it on there, that people didn't know they're actually going by at an iconic prop. Who knows what happened to that? Maybe, hopefully it's still around since they took the E.T. ride down. But and maybe that's why when you like, as you said, locations, this is as good as it gets, for that. Those things are going to stick around at least longer than movie props. And
yeah, I mean, I guess that's the one positive thing about it. It really seems like they're kind of going further away from on studio lots and doing actually other locations and stuff, like actual physical locations, because no one's going to tear down like City Hall in Worcester, Massachusetts,
or the Nakatomi Tower,
right?
Yeah,
but yeah, they're not going to. So if you want to, American Hustle, Free Guy, all these, like now the new Black Panther, it's all right a couple miles that way. And it's all
nice.
Hot garbage. Yeah, just be careful. Wear a bulletproof vest of some sort.
Yeah,
but I don't know. It stinks. And there's a horror museum in Connecticut. I forget what it's called, but it's all classic horror stuff. And he's got like actual like molds for like Karloff and stuff that were used to make prosthetic kind of stuff, and like some original prosthetic that's just falling apart. And it's, you walk in and even though it's just a bunch of old stuff, it just like it changes you when you walk in, it really is just something like special.
This is the real stuff.
Yeah. And it seems like it's just going away. Like the more CG, there's less practical stuff. I don't know.
So I have my fair, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I have my fair share of, I have a lot of props from Halloween H2O. And right now I'm looking up at the Hillcrest Academy flag that was used at the school, and a lot of the knives. My prize piece is, I'm looking over it, it's the top half of the door from the first Nightmare on Elm Street, where the mom got pulled through and so forth.
Nice.
So when I think of like horror, things, and that I got on eBay, but at the time, I have wardrobe from like Jamie Lee Curtis from Freaky Friday and Final Destination 2 and 8 Mile. So at the time, New Line in particular was really good about the movie would be coming out and they would auction off all this props and wardrobe, and so you could buy it or bid on it and stuff like that. So that doesn't happen as much anymore. I think they kind of clue it in like, oh, there could be real money to be made rather than just kind of fans buying up stuff.
Yeah, that stinks. You mentioned Stranger Things earlier, and you just mentioned Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm just curious. Have you watched a new season?
I haven't watched the second half yet. So I watched the first half, but not the final.
I'm
four
like
or whatever.
one. Yeah, I'm one in on the second half. But what are your thoughts as far as it's definitely got a really, really deep nightmare vibe to it?
It does, and I love season 1. I'll be honest, and then the past couple seasons are like, oh, they might have worn out their welcome a little bit. The latest season when I got into. I do like the darker vibe, and maybe because the kids are getting older too. I mean, obviously they're getting into those teenage years that there's definitely that Elm Street vibe. I think because they kind of clued into the, especially the first Nightmare on Elm Street had that true surrealness, but without getting too kitschy. Eventually, you got Freddy doing.
Yeah, eventually you have Roseanne Barr and Tom Arnold.
Yeah. So you think those, just slightly augmented reality or like stuff that can only exist in kind of imagery. So I think they kind of they got it right.
Yeah, I agree. I enjoy it a lot. Like I like all of the seasons. Don't get me wrong. The first season was definitely so far like my favorite, but this one is coming close because they're doing it well, and they know what they have, and they know that it's a very nightmare-esque. Because Robert's in an episode, and he actually referenced Nightmare on Elm Street in the show, the episode after. Like they mentioned, about the dreams, and like, oh, it's just like Freddy Krueger. And some girl's like, what's Freddy Krueger? And he's like, oh, he just kills you in your dreams. And they're like, what are you talking about? She's a little kid. Stop talking about this. But I'm like, so they obviously know what they have and what they're doing. So I respect that as well. They're not trying to like be like, this is our idea, But I dig it. Like I I was only 2 episodes in, and I kind of like stopped on it. Then like someone's like, "No, keep watching." I'm like, "All right," and I did. I'm like, "Holy crap, you were right." It's a cool season for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I'm looking for. I feel like I need to have I needed a whole Saturday just to finish it all because
Yeah.
I don't want to do it in pieces. I feel like I just really need to veg out and
Right.
and get through.
And I'm not done with it either because the last half of the season, each episode is like well over an hour long. So I think the last 2 episodes are over an hour and a half each. So
I can't believe the very last episode. Just kidding.
I was like,
I was
one of those.
Yeah, I was visiting my parents yesterday, and we were like talking about it, and like I was the only one that I was like about the same spot that he was, and no one else there had gotten to that spot yet. And he starts talking about everything. We're like, stop talking. Like my dad's he's 83. He just turned 83 the other day, and I'm just like, Dad, just stop. You're ruining it for everybody. Just please stop. And he's like, what? I don't understand. I'm like, stop talking. I don't know. Old people are fun.
And I was thinking before I went on, because there has been the past few years, I'm thinking of Cobra Kai and Physical, and there has been a Stranger Things, obviously, as well. This true kind of return to 80s, either, truly, things going back and set in the 80s, which I think makes a big difference. And some things just work better when it's actually set in that period. But it feels like there's been a good kind of resurgence. And maybe because we're all at that age where writers are also at that age, or, like, we just kind of want to relive pieces of that.
Right. There's more forgivable stuff, like Fear Street. Like, if you've seen the Fear Street movies.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, they're like, you can forgive the fact that, okay, they're not whipping out a cell phone to text someone, come get me, because there's no cell phones when this movie happened. Yeah. So it's like, it's more forgivable stuff. Like, it's more excusable.
And that's why I think the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake worked, the one that was released in 2003, because it was still set in the 70s, and why the new ones don't quite. There's too much else going on, I was like, it doesn't quite work, this kind of isolation and so forth. That's not a reality of ours anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The new one that was on Netflix, it has its moments, but I'm
tried
like,
to
okay,
like it.
So yeah, how old would Leatherface been in this movie? In his 70s? And the dude was getting around better than he did in the first one in 74.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know.
I know how much slower I move around, so I don't know how he was.
I'm a Leatherface guy. I have
there you go.
Vintage, like a traditional Leatherface
so
tattoo on my arm, and it's blasphemous. Like after like maybe the second Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, I don't even bother, to be honest with you.
So can I ask, have you been down to Texas to visit the locale? Oh,
I'd like to. The house isn't the house gone?
The house is moved.
Okay.
So so actually I had breakfast at the house. So it's so I went there right when they opened, because I wanted to get all my pictures before anybody was, and they are very kind of fans. They actually sat me in the spot where Sally would be eating or sitting. And so you can go upstairs to, the attic where Grandpa was and so forth. So they have posters and so forth. So they're really nice to fans. And
the gas station's still there too, right?
The gas station. Yeah. So, and that's where, when you talk about fans that have taken it, like enveloped it, the gas station, the Outsider's house, they took it and they're super fans, and they made it look like it used to look. And they even put out the stools and the wash cans and so forth to be as close as to the original as it was in the first one. So that means quite a bit.
Well, that's going to be something that's there's a lot that has been on my bucket list, and one of these years I've been meaning to go to Texas Frightmare, so maybe I'll have to make like a whole trip of it, go to Texas Frightmare. And then I know Texas is gigantic, so I don't know how far away it is. So
some of this, like the house in particular, is pretty far from everything else. And I remember I got up early to get there right when they opened, but it is worth it. And the cemetery, and then obviously Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, there's not a whole lot left, but the bridge,
I heard the bridge is like surprisingly short.
It is. Yeah. You can you can walk across it faster than the entire scene was where they're supposedly
that's
driving.
Still pretty. That's probably like the best scene in that movie.
Like,
pretty ridiculous.
I was 16 when that came out and snuck into the theater, because that was one of those you really had to be 17 at the time. I can't remember, was it NC-17? I can't remember what it was called.
I don't know.
At the time, but I did have to sneak in to see that, and it disturbed me because I didn't know what I was getting for. I didn't quite get the black comedy at the time. But
have you ever seen it, RW? Have you seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2?
I've only seen the first one, and that was probably like last year for the first
time. Oh, really?
Wow. Yeah, Tracy was like, let's watch this. And I'm like, okay. So yeah, it was my first time ever watching.
For a movie that's like legendarily like was banned for the violence, there's no violence in that movie. Like it's supposed to be it's all implied violence. There's no gore in that movie whatsoever.
It's funny when you talk about a bridge in there's a town here in Vermont. I think it's East Corinth, if I'm correct, but they filmed Beetlejuice there. And the schoolhouse at the end where, Zenora's coming out of school is the last I knew that building was still there. And the hardware store or at least the building was still there the last time I went. But the bridge that they drive through, like it's a covered bridge, is actually just a bridge with guardrails on it. And they built a covered bridge to put on it or whatever. And so the covered bridge is like, 3, 4, 8 miles down the road and, not there, but you can still take a picture of it. And there's they've patched the hole that the car went through and stuff. But somebody actually bought the house, which was a shell that was up on the hill. And I guess eventually turned it into like a working home or whatever. But nice. It is funny how like Jumanji is a perfect example. They filmed part of it in Keene, New Hampshire. There's a scene where these kids are riding bikes and they turn this corner and go to the factory. The factory's in South Berwick, Maine. So when we watch a movie and, there's a cut scene and somebody's going through the woods and then they come out of the woods, we just go, oh my God, the same woods. No, it's different woods. And it was filmed, 27 miles away or whatever. So it's not like you can go through those woods and end up where they ended up because it isn't there. But a lot of times we forget that, with cuts and stuff, people think
movie magic.
God, that's right there, but it's not. And then you guys mentioned a lot of resurgence in 80s movies. Some people love this movie and some people hated it. I'm on the love it side, but 8-Bit Christmas.
I don't know it.
Never even heard of it. So I have no opinions yet.
So 8-Bit Christmas, it's a Christmas movie about a kid who wants a Nintendo and all the stuff he goes through to try to get this Nintendo. And it's very 80s. I believe the Nintendo came out in the 80s, but it's a retro movie called 8-Bit Christmas. And some people are like, movie's dumb. And other people are like, it's the new Christmas Story. But if you haven't seen it, 8-Bit Christmas, it's a pretty good, heartwarming kind of movie. But
I'll check it out.
But yeah,
I'm all about old school Nintendo, and Christmas movies are always a soft spot. My wife watches them year round.
Yeah,
it drives me crazy, but whatever.
Good old Hallmark Channel.
Oh my God, Lifetime and Hallmark, Christmas in July.
But yeah, I think there is a resurgence of things 80s and 70s, because I think, like you say, these people writing these scripts are now us from then. We're now, in our 50s and we're like screenwriters and we're like, what was the coolest part of my life? I was getting a Nintendo I wanted a Nintendo for Christmas. Oh, there's a great idea. Or, Stranger Things is like, when would this thing have taken place? When was a cool period of time? And they're like the 80s, and a lot of times, if you're watching 80s-esque movies that are going back in time, you're like, that type of house didn't exist then. That car's like an 88, and you're saying this is 84. That song didn't get released for 3 years from then. So there is things you can pick apart. You're like,
that's exactly. I was going to bring that up.
It wasn't invented for a year later or whatever. But
so I do reviews with the 13th Wolfman on the audio side of my other show, and like a lot of times he's like, "No, that car came out in 87. This movie took place in 85. That doesn't make any sense." Yeah, I'm like, you need to simmer down. I don't know that. You're ruining it for me. Like, because you're a car dude, like this, you're ruining it for me.
Well, in Stranger Things, Stranger Things, they've a couple times they've worn a Michael Myers mask. I'm like, we didn't have those level of masks in the 80s. We had the horrible. It looked close enough for the time, but I was like, that's not the real mask.
Oh yeah. I can remember buying a Nightmare on Elm Street, like a Freddy Krueger mask, thinking like, oh my God, this thing is phenomenal, right? It is like 2 colors. It is horrible. I mean, I was just like, oh my God, people are gonna really think I'm him. And I'm like, I was a little kid. I mean, I made a glove with like a work glove and like plastic knives. Yeah. My mom wouldn't buy me a glove. And I was just like, this is the best. I'm like, this was hard, like just so bad. Compared to now, oh my God.
Yeah, no. Actually, I bought when I was 17, 1987. So Dream Warriors, that was about the high, they hit that peak.
Yeah.
I still have my mask from Freddy Krueger, and actually has worn pretty well. So I can grab it real quick if you want to see it. It's just right behind me.
I'm curious.
I'll let you talk. Yeah.
Do it.
Oh, he's got his Jaw Street E-shirt on.
There you go.
Oh
He's
my
prepared.
God. And
he was prepared.
Yeah.
Well, when we get him back on, when we can get it figured out, get him back on, we'll have to have Robert come on.
We can get him back on and figure out how we need to connect and get that going. But hopefully he is watching. But for all you fans who tuned in for Pat, we do apologize that he had some problems, but it wasn't let's advertise somebody and then not have him here. Right. Not that at all.
The old bait and switch.
Yeah, it was not that. It was technical difficulties. But yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah, see, I mean, compared to the masks now, I mean, back then that was sick.
Yeah.
But the ones now, those ones that go on and you can move your mouth and it looks like
there's a dude I run into at cons all the time. He's a nightmare. I forget what he goes by.
New England Nightmare guy. Yeah.
Something. Yeah, exactly. And he's got the real like metal and everything.
So
and
these were the 1980s. Yeah, it says 19.
Yeah, I think I have that one.
Yeah. So for some reason, these have survived all these decades that I still have these, and I'm surprised the mask really hasn't fallen apart.
Yeah.
Because usually these things disintegrate.
Yeah.
But
I was going to say my prized possession, and it's totally not nearly as cool as your prized possessions. But for me, I have the Book of the Dead from Evil Dead 1, like the DVD set that came in the Book of the Dead. But I've met the entire cast, so like I have it signed by everybody, and so I have that wrapped and like sealed and everything, but it's falling apart.
Yeah.
Wow. It sucks. I'm like, my prized possession is just crumbling before me, but like I can't get rid of it because you got to figure each one of those autographs cost at least minimum of $25. So that's probably the most expensive thing I have in my minimum. Yeah. And then Bruce Campbell alone, it was probably, close to triple that. Probably. I don't know. I've met Bruce a bunch of times. He's a very good time. If you ever get a chance to see a Q&A with Bruce Campbell, it's a party.
He knows how to work a room.
He really does. And he's one of those guys too that really he makes you feel like he remembers you. I know he doesn't, but he makes you feel like, because the first time I met him was when his first book came out, If Chins Could Kill, Tales of a B-Movie Actor. Yeah. And I asked him about Crime Wave, if Crime Wave was ever going to come out like as an actual US release on DVD or this is before Blu-ray. And he's like, "You actually like that piece of shit?" And I'm like, "I do. I think it's great. It's charming. It's weird. It's a Sam Raimi and Coen Brothers movie together, And years later, I ran into him at another con. I'm like, "Oh, any more word on Crime Wave?" I asked him. He's like, "Considering you're the only person who ever asked me about that movie, I doubt it." And I'm like, "You don't remember that, but that makes me feel like $1 million,
Yeah.
And then Shout Factory or Scream Factory released it, and I'm like, I can stop asking him now. Yeah. Now I can ask him about something else.
And those are the good. I mean, obviously, you've been to conventions like I have. That sometimes you kind of get like the dead fish. Like it becomes super transactional, and it kind of ruins it for you a little bit.
Oh, totally.
But there's ones like that. You walk away feeling special, and sometimes it's like the last person I thought. Oh, I'm gonna go meet. Like Sally Struthers. I was like, All in the Family, of course, I should go meet her, whatever. And it being just a fantastic interaction and stuff like that. And she took the time, even though she had a line of people. Robert Englund is usually that's why his lines take so long, because he takes the time to do that and is not like, give me your money.
The kid playing Eddie on Stranger Things was at a con, I guess. And I didn't hear the full story, so if I'm wrong, anybody can correct me later. But he was taking his time with every single fan, because why? If it wasn't for those fans, where would he be? So he's like taking his time, and the promoter was like, "Look, you're taking too much time with these people," and yelled at him and made him wicked upset or whatever. And all these fans came and said, "Thank you for standing up for us," or whatever. But I've had interactions where, like, one of my best was Mick Foley. I walk up to Mick's table. I didn't have any money. I just wanted to talk to him real quick. And he wanted to do this video with me. I was dressed as Dick Van Dyke from Mary Poppins. And he wanted to film this video. Long story short, the people who were in charge of Mick Foley were like, "No, you're not doing this." And Mick Foley's like, "Yeah, we are. I want to do this." So like a lot of times the people sitting with the celebrities will tell them what they can and can't do. Right. But I love the celebrities who go, "Look, you work for me. And if you want to continue to work for me, I'm going to do this thing my way. And if not, you can go find another job." And those are the celebrities that really do care about their fans. But the other ones are like, Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Yeah.
No, why can't
Thankfully, for all the cons I've been to, I can probably count on one hand how many times I've had a bad experience with a celebrity.
Yeah.
And I've met, I don't even know how many people.
Right. Yeah. You and me both. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, it's very, very few, but they stick out. I'll be honest with you. And I'm also, I don't hesitate to tell people about it. When someone's like, oh, well, you've ever, I'm like, I'll tell them all about it. I'm like, yep, here we go. Sit down. I have a story to tell.
And it's funny because I'll be like, I met Henry Winkler and Jonathan Frakes, and they weren't very nice. And everybody's like, what do you mean? Henry Winkler's the nicest person on the planet. And I'm like, not to me, he wasn't.
Right.
So it's like, it's so weird that you go, well, this person was a complete jerk. And they're like, dude, that person invited me to their house. I went out to lunch with them. I slept over. I wore his pajamas. And you're like, wait a minute. Like, you know what? It's so weird that sometimes you say this person was no good, and the other people are like, whoa, you're on crack, man.
I was going to say, because when I met Henry Winkler, it couldn't have been a more pleasant experience.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. I wanted him to be my grandpa. Like, I really did. I'm like, I want you to be my grandpa. Like, you're phenomenal. Like, whatever. But it's about that time, RW. I know we've been talking a lot about stuff. Yeah, we're already at a little over an hour. So, and so we'll get the guest we were supposed to have on. We'll definitely get him back. We'll get things figured out.
If he's listening, I even wore my Jaws 3D shirt.
I know. Today. When you got up to get your Freddy Krueger mask, like he pointed that out. I'm like, he was prepared. See,
I wore my shameless self-promotion.
Gotcha. I wore a Chewbacca as
there we go.
The bear. Saying only you can prevent force fires because I'm 46 and I have puns on my shirt.
Oh,
anyways,
my God.
Whatever.
So yes, to all you people who tuned in expecting Pat, he literally was scheduled. He had problems.
He tried.
He was trying to connect through a phone and couldn't quite get it to connect. We went on because we have to kind of go on or lose the spot. And we had Robert, and it all worked out.
You were planning on having Robert on as a guest, anyways.
Yes,
so
I was, so it worked out.
So now we just rearrange things. We'll have Pat on, and as the time where we're going to have Robert on, and then I don't know, we'll figure that out.
Yeah, we'll say today's episode is Robert, but we'll have Pat.
Yeah, we'll call it Probert, and that'll be like a mashup.
I do like this is the big bait and switch podcast all the time.
But I mean, in closing, is there certain places that you like people following you on social media? I know you got the setjetter.com. Any other things you got going on and that you want to end this your time with?
Yeah, so my website setjetter.com, but I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, and so you can kind of find me there. And the good thing about COVID is that I was kind of stuck at home and not traveling for a year or so. So I worked a lot of my backlog. I take a lot of requests because there's random movies that I don't even know about and I love to get those, or music videos or whatever happens to be. So feel free. Also feel free to send your pictures, because I'm like, I created my website to not just be about my visits, but anybody's visits. So Kevin, I'm thinking you probably can get pictures, and I want to make it open to everybody to as a place to kind of share their pictures.
That'd be cool. Yeah, I'll do that, because I drive by where they did American Hustle like all the time.
Nice.
So we can be little set jetters.
Yes.
Yeah. We're not. It's more like it's like the opposite of a jetter, where you just get in your car and drive for 5 minutes. Yeah. Set Mosier.
Just Mosier. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to follow me is there, and I got links at the bottom of the page for Facebook, Twitter, and there's also a link to our All Our Yestredays page, which shows some of the upcoming guests, our co-hosts, and then there's another page. So once these videos upload, I'll put a link to them there. We also are on the internet. We're also on the Internet Movie Database. So we keep adding our shows and our guests and stuff there, so you can find us over there. And that brings us to Kevin, the producer, to wrap this thing up and say where he wants to be followed.
I'm just A-Knuckle on Instagram. I'm also I have a podcast called Wicked Horror Show, which is live Tuesday nights, Eastern Standard Time, on both Facebook and YouTube. The audio podcast goes up a week later. We have anywhere from first-time filmmakers up to horror icons, and everywhere from we've had literally first-time filmmakers trying to fund their first film, and we've had Sid Haig on. We've had Kane Hodder on. D. Wallace has been on multiple times. So it's a fun show. A lot of effort goes into it. Been doing it for years. I'm also part of Black and White Fright and Violence Buffet. which is a YouTube show where we just try to freak out one of our friends who hasn't watched a lot of horror movies by showing them the most violent parts of said horror movies. And so far it's been pretty fun. But yeah, that's about it for me.
So again, thank you guys for joining. Sorry about the, Pat not being here. He was supposed to be, just for all you people who are like, false advertising. No, it wasn't. It was a mistake. It was technical difficulties, but we'll have him on, and hopefully next time we can figure it all out. Thank you guys for tuning in, and have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.